Most people believe compounding is about higher returns. They think the faster money grows, the faster wealth appears. So the focus becomes performance, better returns, bigger gains, and faster movement. But there is a structural problem hidden inside that thinking. Compounding is not destroyed by slow growth. It's destroyed by interruption. And the biggest interruption in money is not time. It's loss. Not small loss, deep loss. Once you understand how loss interacts with time, compounding starts to look less like a race and more like something fragile that must be protected. The common belief is simple. Higher returns build wealth faster. And technically, that sounds correct. If money grows faster, results should improve faster. But this belief hides a dangerous assumption. It assumes growth happens in straight lines. It assumes gains and losses cancel each other out evenly. But they don't. Losses are heavier than gains. Not emotionally, structurally. If money drops, recovery takes more effort than the original loss required. And most people don't notice this until time has already been damaged. A 10% gain feels productive, and a 10% loss feels manageable. But they aren't equal. And once this imbalance compounds over time, growth begins to fracture. Quietly at first. Then permanently. To understand this clearly, remove emotion and look at structure. Start simple. If you gain 10%, your base increases. If you lose 10%, your base decreases. That sounds symmetrical, but recovery isn't symmetrical. Let's reduce it to simple movement. Start with 100. You lose 50%. You now have 50. To return to 100, you don't need 50%. You need 100%. That's the imbalance most people never calculate. Loss creates a distance, and recovery requires acceleration. And acceleration consumes time. This is where compounding breaks. Not because growth failed, but because recovery consume the timeline. The deeper the loss, the longer the repair. And during the repair, compounding pauses. Not emotionally, structurally. Even moderate volatility can disrupt long-term growth if losses stack too closely together. Not because growth is weak, but because time is being stolen by recovery. Okay, draw two columns. The left column is loss, and the right column is required recovery. If you have a 10% loss, you'll need an 11% gain. If you have a 25% loss, you'll need a 33% gain. And if you have a 50% loss, you'll need a 100% gain to recover. While loss moves downward, recovery stretches upward. That stretch is time. This is where most financial damage happens. Not from one catastrophic event, but from repeated volatility. Small damage repeated over time behaves like structural fatigue. Each loss introduces recovery time. Each recovery delays forward progress. And when recovery becomes frequent, compounding weakens. Not because growth stopped, but because time became occupied with repair. Now, consider two investors. One earns steady returns, moderate growth, controlled movement, and the other earns aggressive returns. Large gains, followed by large losses. At first, the aggressive path looks impressive. Performance spikes, momentum builds, but volatility accumulates. Losses deepen. Recovery periods stretch. And eventually, both investors have similar gains, but very different timelines. One moved forward consistently, while the other spent years repairing damage. Same market, same opportunity, different behavior. This is where discipline separates from excitement. Most people chase return, but structured thinkers protect time. Because once time is consumed by recovery, momentum becomes fragile. And fragile systems don't compound well. Rule number 9. Protect the base before chasing growth. Growth is valuable, but survival is required. Protect the base before chasing growth. Not occasionally, consistently. Because compounding depends less on speed and more on uninterrupted progress. Slow growth that survives outperforms fast growth that collapses. Not emotionally, mathematically. Average behavior celebrates gains, but structured behavior measures damage. Most people track performance when things go well, but very few measure recovery time when things go poorly. And that difference compounds. One mindset chases motion, the other protects continuity. One assumes growth will continue, the other assumes interruption is always possible. Not out of fear, but out of structure. Because real compounding isn't built on optimism. It's built on survival. And not dramatic survival, but quiet survival. The kind that prevents unnecessary resets. Once volatility is understood, another question naturally appears. If losses damage time, what prevents losses from becoming catastrophic? Not luck, not timing. Control does. Specifically, position control. How much exposure exists at any given moment determines how much damage is possible. And this leads directly into the next structural idea. Position size determines survival, not prediction, not intelligence. Position size. Because the size of exposure controls the size of loss. And the size of loss controls the length of recovery. That's where the next layer begins.